Okay. Okay, welcome back to our series on wood turning. What we're going to do, we've already shown you some of the things that you can do, but I brought in a sample of what I've done over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I guess I've been doing this for about 40 years. So anyway, let's talk about a few of these items. First one here, we have a bowl that's about 14 inches in diameter, and this is persimmon. Persimmon, they make golf clubs out of it, but not out of this quality persimmon. A persimmon tree is an ebony tree that grows in the northern latitude. And I've run a sawmill for about 40 years. I've only ever gotten one persimmon log that was of this quality, where you have a black heart like you would have in an ebony tree. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the pieces that I would never ever get rid of as long as I'm alive, because many things that I make, I give them away or I sell them, but this is one item that I would not want to part with. Okay, so much for that bowl. Then we've made a lot of wooden fruit. And through the years, I've probably made thousands of pieces of fruit. This is a pear. Oh my, it started to rot. It's been around so long. This is Osage orange. I don't know if you know what Osage is. Osage is probably the hardest wood that we have here in Pennsylvania. Extremely hard. Here's another one, and Osage, very, very hard. And the apples we make out of red cedar. And see, it lends itself to apples, the right color. It's very soft to turn. It's nice stuff for making wooden fruit. So anyway, here we have another bowl that I'd really like to. This is another one that I would never get rid of. This happens to be a piece of a quarter of a sassafras tree. Now normally a sassafras tree will only get maybe 12 inches in diameter if you're lucky. But this one I found with 28 inches in diameter, and I was able to actually make a bowl out of the quarter. That's why you see the grain pattern that you do here. This is the center, and then the growth rings go this way. And very unusual to get a sassafras bowl that big. All right, so much for bowls. And I'm not going to be demonstrating on a lathe that big enough to make these bowls. These are just something to show you what's possible. Okay, here we have a little wooden bell that I made years ago. The bottom's cherry, and you can maybe hear that. And the handle, I actually do that with a little saw. I don't have an ornamental lathe. I actually make lines both directions and connect them with a little saw that I have. Okay, then next one, I make a lot of these. These are called Safran boxes. And in the Pennsylvania Dutch region, Safran boxes are little hollow devices that are made out of wood, because people in our region stored saffron in them. And probably many of our viewers don't know what saffron is, but saffron is the most expensive food seasoning in the world, most expensive spice that you can buy. It's about $1,200 a pound. And the way we grow it here in the Pennsylvania Dutch region, we plant, and here's another one, but we plant the bulbs in May, and they come up in October, and you harvest them. There's 3 little stamens in a plant. So you get a tweezers, you take the little stamens out, you put them in a pie plate for a couple of days, and you dry them. And then you store them in a wooden container like this, because if you put them in a metal container, there'll be some condensation, and the saffron would be ruined, and at $1,200 a pound. Oh, and by the way, there are approximately 275,000 stamens in a pound of saffron. So if you want to get into a very lucrative business, get into the saffron business, but I think you'll give up pretty quick, because how long would it take you to gather 275,000 stamens because they're very small. Okay, here's some other saffron boxes. This little guy is olive wood. This little guy is purple heart. He's starting to turn brown. Like most woods do change color over time. This is one of my favorite here. This is apple, spalded apple. And the lids come off of all of these, as you can see. And that would be a saffron box. Here's another little one. This is an English walnut one, which I kind of like. This is a persimmon, which is related to that bowl that we showed you. Because when I get persimmon of this grade, I treasure it, because you don't get much of it. This little guy is hickory, spalded hickory. And then we make mortars and pestles, and this guy is naturally hollowed out, and you put your Do people actually use these? I have no clue, but I make them anyway, just to add to whatever. Then we make these spinning tops, and we used to make thousands of these. Now I'll show you this little guy. And they'll probably spin for 2 to 5 minutes. They spin for, if you do them on a linoleum floor, they last forever. It's a little simpler a toy for kids today, and I think kids would still be fascinated by something like this. So anyway, and you buy a shoestring, and shoestrings are getting hard to find because nobody ties their shoes anymore. So anyway, you put it in there, wind it up, and pull the string, and away you go. Okay, now the last thing I want to show you is, next to the last, here we have, it's akin to the Russian dolls. You have a big egg, and then you have another pair, another pair, another pair, this guy, down to here, and then we go down to this little guy right here. And I had one inside of that, but somebody lost it. It kind of disappeared. So, and let's put him back together. If I can even pick his little guy up, he's kind of small. Let's see if I can get him together. And then we'll put him inside of that guy. And then we go in here. The thing's been put together so many times that it doesn't really want to stay apart or stay together like it should. So anyway, we keep on going. How long does it take to turn something like this? Well, if you're a beginner, you'd be looking at maybe a day or two, but if you have some experience, you can turn something like this in a few hours. And do you use calipers? No, you just kind of estimate diameters and do the best that you can. Oops, this one only goes together one way. So this guy has to go like this, and then he'll fit. All right. Okay, one last thing I want to show you. This is the kind of thing that requires quite a bit of practice, but in videos that we have coming down the line, we're going to show you how to turn something like this, and you can turn something like this in a few minutes. It's just an exercise and see how long you can turn this and how thin you can make it. That thing is probably 1/8 of an inch in diameter, comes down to a point, and it's probably 7 inches long. So anyway, we'll show you how to do that. One other item, used to make a bunch of pens. This happens to be a piece of rosewood, which is almost impossible to get now. All the rosewood is gone from Brazil, and you can still find a little bit of it, but very expensive. But anyway, I used to make lots of pens, but we don't do much of that anymore either. Okay, those are some of the items that we plan to work with on upcoming videos. So
what do you have coming up next for us, Barry?
We are going to get into tools. We're going to talk about tools.
Thank you.